So Pokemon Day is just about a month away, and with the brand new generation being released just about 2.5 months ago, I believe we're all thinking the same thing. A DLC announcement is imminent. Of course, Pokemon could pull a fast one on us and do something totally out of left field, like going back to doing third versions, a full-blown sequel, or maybe just saying we're done in Paldea and moving on to a new Let's Go game, which I wouldn't be opposed. Let's Go Johto, anybody? However, I really do think just a new expansion is the ticket here. So that leads us to answering the question from the title of the video. What could and should they do for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet DLC? Well, I've got a lot of ideas that I want to share with you all today, breaking down things that I'd really like to see, as well as things I think we can expect. So without further ado, let's get into it. Before we get into the video, however, I want to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, Upside. I'm a big fan of traveling when I get the chance, and with it a lot easier to do so now, I try to get out in the world when I can. Things definitely can get expensive when planning a trip though, especially nowadays. But with Upside, my new favorite app to earn cash back on all my travel expenses, I can basically just earn it for doing what I love. I basically use the app anytime, not just when I'm trying to travel, whether that be putting gas in the car or shopping for groceries. It's super simple to use, and it allows me to put money back in for future travel. So to get started with Upside today, go locate the app in Google Play or the App Store and use the promo code MYSTIC94. It'll get you started on this awesome cashback journey and get you an extra 25 cents per gallon on your first tank of gas. Just go in, claim an offer, then pay as you normally would while following the app's step-by-step guide, and you're golden. Upside doesn't sell your information to third parties and allows you to cash out your credit cards, PayPal, or into an e-gift card at any time. So once again, my code is MYSTIC94, and thanks again to Upside for sponsoring today's video. Right off the bat, I should say the most guaranteed thing of all here. We'll definitely get more old Pokemon added in here. We may not get anything new, but with DLC, I think it's safe to say that we'll have plenty of returning mons. My guess would be 75 to 150 this time around. With that said, I really want to see more regional variants, regional variant evolutions, and convergent species Pokemon. I know Gen 8 really spoiled us with the sheer amount of regional variants, alongside a nice handful of evolutions for some of them, but it really was a bummer to just get 2 in Paldea. And yes, I'm saying 2 instead of 4, because I refuse to count those other 2 forms of Tauros as separate regional variants. The problem here is that even though they could be traded for free, I think if they put a whole bunch in the DLC, it would probably make people pretty mad, and I kind of get it. But if we could just get like 4 or 5 more with maybe 2 brand new evolutions, I think that would be pretty satisfactory. I mean, we got 6 in the Sword and Shield DLC, so I feel it's not totally out of the question. Then there's convergent species Pokemon. It feels so odd that they decided to introduce this new kind of Pokemon that could look like they could be regional variants, but are completely their own thing and just have only 2 lines of them. I'm not saying we should have had a crazy huge number, but like, we already know about Wiglet, which definitely meant Wugtrio was in the fan stream of consciousness. So really, we only got to experience the Toedscroll line blind, and that's it. So yeah, I definitely want to see more of these. I get that Paradox Pokemon, which are kind of like regional variants in their own way, were the big focus when it came to new Pokemon this generation, but still. Now, as for Pokemon that I'd like to see get some regional variants or have convergent species based on, let's see. On the regional variant side of things, let's get some love for the Mandibuzz, Metagross, and Kingdra lines. Mandibuzz because I think Braviary's counterpart needs some love too. Metagross because it was a very odd pseudo to not show up here, and maybe a reason for that is because it potentially has a new form coming. And finally, the Kingdra line because who wouldn't want to see these cool Gen 1 and 2 Pokemon get some love? Now, for convergent species, that's a bit trickier to think of, because you really do have to think about what Pokemon that you'd think are regional variants, but then have something about them where you can be like, yeah, I can accept that as a brand new Pokemon. Let's go with Heatmor and Durant. Plenty of actual convergent animals have marsupial counterparts, and the anteater is no exception. And rove beetles are beetles that evolved to look like ants in order to eat them. So it makes sense why they would look similar to a Durant without actually being one. Perhaps Heatmor could be a ground fairy, while Durant is a fire steel. I think that would actually be pretty cool. Moving on from forms like that, I want to talk about new Pokemon, specifically Paradox Pokemon. I had mentioned that it made sense why they went the route they did. So of course, I think in the DLC, they need to take that concept further. We've already seen hints within the games themselves of legendary Paradox Pokemon, which seem to be a combination of Johto's legendary beasts for a past Paradox Pokemon in Scarlet, and a combination of the Swords of Justice for a future Paradox Pokemon in Violet. So naturally, we need to see those, as well as a handful of other ones. This also shouldn't just be ones we stumble across either. There definitely should be some cool story attached to them. Then that brings me on to my last want. When looking at the Sword and Shield DLC, it was really decent when you look at it as a whole. But the decision to split it up in the two very medium-sized expansions, with Crown Tundra being the more story-oriented one, I think it's time for a change. I get wanting to keep engagement for the game throughout the whole year, but I genuinely believe the DLC would have been much more well received if it had just been one big expansion. Sure, there would have been less people playing in the middle of the year, but the big surge towards the end of the year with a bunch of stuff to keep them busy throughout, it just seems to be better to me personally. Now, it seems pretty obvious that this upper right hand corner of the map is the best place to put additional land for us to travel to, as it has shown its own weird thing, visualizing how it's separate from the rest of Paldea, and also the official artwork has it mysteriously covered up by clouds. Now, people think this could be the long-awaited Southern Kalos we've been waiting to see. And yeah, geographically speaking, that would make sense. But canonically, what if they didn't consider it to be Southern Kalos, and rather was Northern Paldea this whole time? I mean, that would be a little silly, but I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility. No matter what, it definitely seems like an area that could either be the connector between those two regions, or maybe it's something more akin to an Area Zero, a place between both regions that neither of their populace travel to because of the mystery and dangers surrounding it. And that's how we tie into these legendary Paradox Pokemon. Now, with this hypothetical plot of land, with all these new Pokemon forms and whatnot on it, what would the story look like? Well, I believe it should involve the Area Zero gang in some way, of course. While these characters were pretty inconsequential to one another throughout the majority of the games, they did bring them together pretty nicely in the very final moments of the game, leading to them all being such a fun and memorable cast. Then in the post-game, you kind of just run around the school talking to them, which eventually has you being so close with them that they let you come into their dorms. But why? I mean, there weren't any side quests with them, it was just running around and talking. That's it. It feels very insignificant right now, but perhaps doing that with them will activate something in a potential DLC. Perhaps it literally just is, hey, you're close with them now, so go to their dorm room and ask them to come with you. They've already traveled with you to one dangerous place, why not ask them to go with you to another? Now, what would the story look like? Well, that's a bit harder to fully come up with. Really, we do have some rough ideas from what the game is hinting at, but I truly don't believe it's the full picture. The Scarlet and Violet books talk about the explorer Heath and his time in Area Zero. He talked about a strange creature that he couldn't tell whether or not it was a Pokemon or even alive. Clearly, this feels very third in the legendary trio. However, it probably would be its own thing, considering this generation's legendary duo are basically the same Pokemon, just from different periods of time. But everything about this man and stuff within the books still feel a little incomplete, but intentionally so. Then there's the weird stuff going on with the Terrastal phenomenon, Glimmer and Glamora, and the other Paradox Pokemon, of course. So I feel those will somehow also be tied in. The real one I'm not so sure about is Geeta. Everyone and their grandma has speculated why she feels so off. She's a pretty low-tier champion despite being the canonical top champion. And also it seems that she's not unanimously liked by her underlings. So it really wouldn't surprise me if she ends up being some sort of big bad in any kind of DLC we get. But yeah, that's really the only stuff we know that the story could involve. But I'm not going to write a fanfic here about what the story would be like, as it could truly go in a million and one directions. Now, overall, how likely is any of this to happen? Honestly, I think I'm not being too optimistic here. I mean, sure, maybe there are far less regional forms and convergent species than I'm hoping for. maybe there are none at all. But I definitely feel this blocked off area being the potential location for some sort of nice story related thing regarding Heath, this mysterious Pokemon, and more Paradox shenanigans is not too far off from what we're likely to get. I really don't see how they could do a two-parter this time around. So just having one big expansion for the end of the year not only sounds great to me, but is what I feel as the most likely thing to happen. Of course, as per the usual, I could be entirely wrong. And I'm sure there are plenty of people out there who will see this video after we get DLC to let me know how wrong I was or how badly this video aged. So those are my thoughts, guys. What do you all think? Scarlet and Violet were pretty great games, but it definitely left that itch for wanting more, and one decently sized DLC this year would definitely scratch that itch. Do you believe we'll finally be seeing Southern Kalos with more insight on the Paradox and Terrastal phenomena? Or do you think we'll somehow get the biggest curveball we've ever seen? Be sure to let me know down in the comments section below. We're finally here in 2023, and I'm super excited for what this year has to offer us. There's potential DLC for Scarlet and Violet on the horizon, and who knows just what else Game Freak may have up their sleeves. It's gonna be really exciting times coming up for a Pokemon fan. If you're interested in more Mystic content, check out my TikTok and Mystic Umbreon Shorts YouTube channel. I've got a really fun series starting up there very soon, and of course, have a weekly edition of my Should You Use series focusing on Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet. Also, if you're into fanfictions and what-ifs, check out Mystic Reads. I offer a ton of creative spoken word content on there, so come join me. Thanks again for joining me today, and I'll see you all next time.